All right. Welcome to today's webinar. I am super excited that you guys are all in here. Today's webinar is all about increasing contact rates and your call center efficiency. So, to kind of just give you a context for today and why we even chose this topic and why I chose the people that are on here as guest speakers today is that we hear time and time again this year overall, really the last 12 months, contact rates on leads have just been in free fall, in decline. And there's multiple different pieces that are actually plaguing that here with our own cell phones, that everyone using cell phones, and the spam likely and the blocking of phone numbers and all those different aspects of things that are contributing to this. So there's just so many ways we can combat it. And a lot of you are already doing some of these best practices, but I want to go even deeper today in some of that of what we can do. But my goal with all of these webinars is that you just walk away with one nugget that you can kind of take to your team. So all of the guest speakers that I'll introduce here in a minute are touching the industry in so many ways and are experts at what they do. So just a quick introduction from me. My name is Sean Connors. I'm the CEO of Contractor Appointments. We do lead generation for contractors on a revenue share model. So we either send them a lead or an appointment over to our contractors and back it out to a revenue share for them. So you pay per sale. And my guest speakers today, I've got Ruben with Active Prospect here with us. I've got Lori here with Hatch. Megan here with Tony Hoty's organization here as a consultant, and then Lester I've got with JobProgress. So I'm just super excited that you guys took and honored that you guys took some of your hard-earned time and energy to come join us here today and share your wisdom with everybody. So thank you guys for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. That's right.
Yeah, absolutely. So without further ado, we're just going to go into the meat of the questions here. We've got a lot of questions and a lot of stuff to cover. So first off, the first question I had for you guys, and I'll just call on you one by one to kind of answer this and give you some options here, is this. We're just going to broaden the question. So contact rates have dropped in 2022. What are successful companies in this space doing to combat this? So Ruben, I'm going to hand it over to you first, and then we'll go through here.
Yeah. So I've seen over the last 6 months, right? Like, what's the true reason why this is happening? It's all based upon stir shaken, right? Which is essentially the authenticating the caller IDs and making sure that each call center now has essentially like a digital fingerprint. So what I've seen is a lot of brands, smaller and larger, just really understanding what Stir Shaken's about, getting educated on how they can essentially receive an A rating from their carrier, really getting into the nuts and bolts of this new FCC kind of era and really understanding it, working with their dialing company or their dialer to go, hey, what can we do to make sure that our phone numbers don't get blocked, and really combating it with education and also on a daily and consistent basis, along with their dialing partner, whether it's Convoso or Call Tools or any of the other dialers that are out there. And I'm assuming, Lori, that's something that you've seen as well with Hatch kind of being integrated with so many call centers.
Yeah, for sure. We're seeing that a lot. And I think that, Ruben, you're right on in terms of educating yourself, working with, making sure that you're legit and verified, but also trying an omni-channel approach. So reaching out in additional ways. So it's not just phone, maybe it's text message, maybe it's email, but that you're hitting in every way possible so that you can make sure you are connecting as often and as quickly as possible.
Yeah, Lester, I'd love to kind of hear what you're kind of seeing, what companies are doing on the contact rate side of things.
Yeah, I mean, it's really all about having the right CRM, the right heartbeat, the right workflow and process, right? Because it's all about the follow-up. And I think that's where a lot of people really not fall asleep, but you can only manage so much manually, right? So having the right system in place and being able to move through your workflow and automatically be communicating with people, whether, that's a prospect, that's a homeowner, that's a supplier, that's a partner, it's a subcontractor, whatever. You have to automate your process. And it definitely starts when that lead comes in, right? All the way through to getting paid. But all right, what happens after, you collect that money and complete that job? You have to have a process in place. It's got to be automated. So you can kind of set it, forget it, know it's happening, and then things will just come back to you, right?
Yeah, and just to kind of go back to explain, just so everyone knows what, kind of go back to Ruben and what you were talking about, shake and stir. So shake and stir is this, like all of the carriers, all the phone carriers came together and said, hey, we're going to create a fingerprint for your phone number. So your phone number has to be has your business tied to it, your address tied to it, all of those things. But it's also got a trust score that's tied to your identity. Mm-hmm. So when you're making a phone call to a customer, if I pick up my cell phone right now, it's got an identity. If I make 1,000 phone calls from my personal cell phone, there's probably some bot or something behind it making those phone calls. No individual is going to make that many phone calls. So what they're doing is they're trying to combat all these robocalls. They're trying to combat from all that stuff, because at the end of the day, AT&T, my carrier for my phone here, is they negative feedback if their customers are getting a bunch of spam calls. They'll go move to Verizon. So at the end of the day, they want to give their customers the best experience on phones here too. So that's why that exists. But the problem with that is that although it suppresses the robocalls of the people who are doing things incorrectly, it also suppresses the companies who do things above board. So you have to kind of make sure you're jumping through a bunch of hoops. It's easy for big companies to jump through all those hoops. It's harder for small companies to understand what those hoops are. So Megan, I'm curious what you're seeing from the contact rate side of things. What are companies doing? I know that you're seeing that are helping with that.
Yeah, great question. And it's a question we get quite often, especially right now. We've seen a little bit of retraction already in terms of inbound lead flow in general in our industry. In the past 2 to 3 weeks, it has been very evident that there is a shift happening. And really, I just call it normalizing, because we've been spoiled the last 2 years or so, because I remember it prior to COVID. And we're going to normalize. And at some point, we're going to get back to where, we're 2019-ish, 2018-ish. And contact rates have dropped for everyone for multiple reasons. I mean, all of the people that already shared today on this, they understand it way better than I do in terms of the front end, in terms of the carriers, in terms of that sort of thing. With me, I'm really working on the back end of that, which is what happens real life, day to day in the call center as we're dialing, right? And so whether we're using an auto dialer or we're doing manual dial, either one, I have clients that use both. The first thing in terms of contact rate is we have to be tracking the amount of calls we're making per day, or the amount of calls that we're seeing. And it just surprises me that at this point in our industry that more companies aren't doing that. You need to know exactly how many dials it takes to get a connected phone call. You need to know how many of those connected phone calls it takes to get one set appointment. You need to know how many of those set appointments you need to put on the board in order to issue one. Those metrics, I work a lot on the conversions and the efficiencies and the metrics, because those metrics are just so key and we don't talk about them. If we have manual dialers, if we have a smaller call center and people are still dialing by hand, that can be efficient. But you have to manage the people, and you have to lead the people, and you have to inspire them to make 35 to 40 calls per hour, right? Or you could have the dialer doing it for you. But nonetheless, we need to know our numbers in order to know exactly if something is a good spend or it's not a good spend of our marketing. We have to know how many it's taking us to get in front of one prospect in person. And so, for me, it's really it starts with the dialing number. It starts with the amount of dials we're making to prospects on the outbound side, and then how many of those are connecting with a qualified prospect, and then how many can we convert. And I work on the scripting end of it, so I'm able to get a lot of those people that are giving us objections in the first 30 seconds and bridge them into an appointment. So we are seeing lower contact rates too, so it's that much more important for us to know how many dials it's taking to get us to that metric. So with the lower contact rate, you need to know your numbers even more now than ever before.
Absolutely. And I think I remember watching or talking with a customer on this too, is that And when you start measuring how this is my contact rate on dial 1 and then dial 2 and dial 3, you're able to measure your differences. If you go, I'm spacing that dial 2 out 30 and I'm going to dial first and then dial in 30 minutes, or dial first and dial in 2 hours, or the days of dialing a lead 60 times within the first 2 weeks is like, it's going away, and you really you can't run a business model like that, especially with the shake and stir.
No, and I think that's probably to the next kind of topic that we have on this session. But the last thing on Stir Shaken is, to your point, the days are gone where you can just hire a call center director and dump a bunch of data into your dialer and hire a bunch of people and figure it out. Those days are gone, and I think the carriers are only going to become more stringent. I think the new era today and I see call centers doing it, where they're hiring somebody who has carrier knowledge and intel along with their call center director. And that position is a fairly new position where they're literally working hand in hand with the carriers to make sure that your authentication process is progressing. They're changing out DID numbers progressively. They're using far more numbers than they ever have before. And then they're testing. So they're finding out whether or not, if they're getting blocked, whether or not it's an error. And if it is an error, they're reporting it to the carrier and going, hey, you're blocking all these numbers and we're a legit business. I have express written consent to call these people for whatever product it is. So I think more and more you'll see call centers start to hire that level of intelligence that previously you didn't need to have, and it really didn't exist.
Yeah, 100%. And Megan, I'll let you set up the next question, but you say something on, you've said it on multiple webinars now, how should you contact a customer and set you up for that? I think that sets up the next question. You talk about, should you call or text, or how you should reach out to a customer there?
Yeah, I mean, we say at Tony Hoty Training and Consulting, we say by land, air, and sea. Okay. And so we need to, because I'll always get this, I have this, for whatever reason, people ask it this way, where they'll say, should I call people or should I text them? And my answer is always yes, like both. Like more is better, less is not more in this case. So how do we contact them? Well, we contact them in several different ways. Obviously, my heart and my goal, and where I built my entire career, is on call centers and actually speaking to people on the phone. However, as we know, the percentage of calls that never get answered is increasing by the day, right? And so we know that text messaging does get answered. So we have to use a conjunction of things, not only phone calls, but we have to be able to use text messaging and email to sort of nudge the customer, to get their attention, to grab their attention, to make them realize that there may be a reason we're calling that they may benefit from, right? So they may want to hear what we have to say. And so sometimes, even if we're not using text and email necessarily to set the appointment in every scenario, we at least are using it to get their attention. We're at least using it to try and contact them and jump on a quick phone call if we're able to build a little brief rapport over text. I'm sure Lori has a great piggyback on that, but we have to use something to contact them other than just phone calls, because our phone call efficiency will go up if we utilize these other things to get their attention. So
completely.
100%.
And I really love Megan talking about really digging into the details. Like, the more granular you can be, the better it's going to be in terms of experiments. And I feel like, especially in this new world, and we've got, shake and stir and everything else going on, we need to know where we're at, and we need to experiment. Try to get yourself into an experiment mindset. So you're exactly knowing, like, okay, when, just like Megan was saying, if it's been, if I did this many calls and this many times, what were my results, and make some hypotheses and try out different things, and then come back and look at that data again, and see how you can adjust from there. But that being said, like I mentioned earlier, the studies show that the majority of people like text. That's just how it is today. That's how I am. That's how, my kids are, my parents are, all the different generations. That being said, there are going to be totally times where text is not the right solution for someone. So emailing, I love Land Air and Sea. You know, you can even go old school, trying a postcard if you want, when we're talking about that experimental mindset. But phone, text, email, and I can't say enough. I think it was Lester who brought this up. Automation. Automation is so crucial, especially when our numbers are down, maybe in the number of callers we have going out there. If you can get some automated systems in place, that again helps with driving that data. There are so many systems with Hatch. We do automation, but there are other ways that you can do it as well. So just don't ignore the idea of using technology and automation to get it moving to the next level. And I don't know if Lester, you had something to add on that.
Yeah. It starts with the automation, right? Once that lead comes in, you got to be able to automatically communicate with that through the workflow. Having access to your communication, whether it is text, email, or phone, you have to understand where you left off in that conversation, what they looked at, what they didn't look at. So, having an app in your hands at all times will give you that clarity, so that you're enhancing their customer experience. You're not talking about something redundantly or off topic. So again, in the workflow with a company such as Hatch, we integrate with Hatch. You want that stuff going through there, so it's happening, and I can check to see where I'm at, understand where I'm at, and then go ahead and execute. Call must happen.
Yeah.
Text must happen. Email must happen. All must happen. But I would go email, I would go call, and then I would go text. That would be my order, and I'm typically seeing from our users in JobProgress. If they look at an email, they saw it. If they didn't see that, they're getting a text right away, because now it's triggering another response in their head that, oh, okay, maybe I should respond to this, right? And everyone is using text right now. You have to do it.
Yeah.
The automation has to happen, and you have to call. So it's Land, Air, and Sea. I love that.
Yeah, I had just visited in Columbus, Ohio last week, the QR Qualified Remodeler Top 500, and every major speaker who is operating a business, the entire focus was on technology. And the message was, if you're not implementing technology on the front end, along with throughout your operations, you're not doing it. And right now, what I'm seeing from a lot of folks, and obviously Lori's a big partner, folks are using AI SMS more so than ever before, and not just SMS text, but they're starting to use photos and starting to have different messaging and like kind of A/B testing with photos of the roofer on the roof or the person doing windows. I'm also seeing on the lead gen side, a lot of lead vendors, big lead gen companies, DMS, clean energy experts, using and have been using avatars that completely sound like a human. Back in the day, 2-3 years ago, you'd get an avatar that called you and you guys would kind of hang up because you would know it's an avatar. Now it's really hard to tell. And you kind of go through the motion of talking to a computer thinking it's a human. So we're seeing more and more folks starting to use AI than ever before. And ultimately, to kind of the point of the other presenters, automating the entire process in real time, where you're grabbing the lead, you're pushing it to JobProgress, you're pushing it to Hatch, you're pushing it to your design tool, and you're getting everything automated so that your speed to lead, along with all your omni-channel messaging, is pretty instant consecutively for all your leads.
Can I jump in and say, I see that Brandon asked a question, and I think Megan may have some great insight on this too, but Brandon asked about how to avoid, like when you're texting or something, getting taken off, asked to be taken off the call list, still getting good responses, that kind of stuff. And I think it kind of goes to what Ruben said about how you need to seem, while we're advocates of technology, we are also advocates of that personal touch and having the right messaging and seeming like a real person. You can absolutely, even with automation, anything else, when you're texting, you don't want to seem like a computer. You don't want to seem like a robot. That's when you're going to get people asking to have you removed. And I don't know, in terms of scripting, Megan, maybe you have ideas along that, but there are tons of ways that you can get your message in a way that is real and personable and valuable. I mean, they're looking for value, not spam.
Well, and I think that's important. That's kind of an important piece that I wanted to speak to before we moved on as well. The reason that homeowners and customers like text messaging, guys, is because it's non-committal. You guys understand that? They want to do it this way because consumers avoid sales situations like the plague. And they continue for that to continue. With our society the way it is, people are really into instant gratification. People are really into immediate response, right? And so when they don't get that, there's an issue. When they don't see that, there's an issue. I think it's important to remember that consumers are afraid of sales situations, which is why they want to rely on text messaging. Now, it doesn't make them wrong for that. It just means that we have to get smarter. It means we have to get craftier. We have to utilize some of these different areas and automation between text messaging, calls, and emails in order to reach people, because there will be different people that respond, and sometimes they respond different times of day. So text messaging might work great for them between 8 and 9 because they're not at work yet and they may be able to respond. Text the same person at 11, 12 and they don't answer, right? So there's a few things to think about there. How do you get people to not say that they want to be taken off the list? That's a great question. If I had an easy answer for that, I probably would be off on an island somewhere because I would sell it to every company in the entire country. I think Lori really hit the nail on the head, which is that if the customer sees something of value coming from you, they don't want to be taken off the list. The only time they want to be taken off the list is because you're not providing value, and all they're seeing is, they feel like they're getting bombarded at some point, and you're not sending them useful hints or tips that might warm up the lead so that when we do call, they actually answer, right? So there's a few different things we can do there. And all of that, you could set up an automated process between Hatch, JobProgress, whoever you use. You could set up an automated process that we have the same automated texting going out to these people and say, hey, we understand you might not be ready yet, but, and then we say something, that helps us get them and move them along in the buying cycle. But we have to understand that there's a reason people want to text instead of talk on the phone, because it's much easier to say no. And we have to be prepared for that. And we have to know on the front end that that's the case so that we're actually giving them real value, so yeah.
100%. I think that one of the interesting things about text message too, that I think we don't, that's undervalued is that no, of being asked to take off the list actually that's a conversation or a phone call that would have never answered your phone. So text can often be a really good way to be able to find if the lead is where they're at in the buying cycle. And they might go, actually, I filled out that form. I'm not ready to do anything yet. And you could put them into a drip sequence. That, just like I said, with the time of dialing people 60 times and dialing a lead until they contact is going away. But texting that customer on an ongoing basis and touching base in a very customer-centric way of being able to, like, is there anything I can help with? You filled out this form and I just I wanted to make sure we didn't forget about you. You're really busy and we're here for you. Is that roof still an issue? Are you guys experiencing any leaks? Or, you inquired a month ago about windows. Is that, where's that in the priority list? You can ask these very human type questions and not AI questions that create engagement. The goal of the start of any relationship is just for them to engage with you. And I think that's the difference between, the dialing someone a bunch of times versus that, just like you had said, is people want to be this low barrier of entry of just this customer centric, communication. So I love that. I think, and the big thing about call center bandwidth, and I heard this a bunch of times here too, is we hear time and time again that it's more expensive to hire. We had another webinar on this earlier this year. It's more expensive to keep those callers here as well. So you got to maximize their time. And I think texting does a good job of making sure that the phone calls that they make are that much more valuable. And the communication they have with each customer is spent with quality people there as well. So I think that using technology, making sure you're routing the right leads in the door in the first place, as well as you're contacting those people the way they want to be communicated, and you're dialing out to people who are actually interested and want to speak with you.
One other last thing that I'm seeing out there that's pretty prevalent, that's changed from when I was in a call center 5 years ago and before, is more and more the lead generation side, they're starting to go a lot more down the customer journey. So instead of having just a traditional web form, and obviously Contractor Appointments knows this because this is what you guys do, but more and more brands are starting to take the customer and not just giving them a 1 or 2 page landing page where you fill in your info. They're literally taking them through a 7-8 step kind of funnel process that gets a lot of the information that you would normally get on an outbound phone call. So therefore, the customer is giving you more information, spending more time, and there feels more invested. So when you outbound and outreach, they're like, wow, I spent more time than I would normally do. I'm going to go ahead and respond. So I am seeing that a lot more as well.
Absolutely. Well, I think people don't like to be qualified. They want to be heard of what their problem is, all that stuff on the front end here too. So I think that's part of the reason why I think asking more questions of what they are and routing them correctly is just so much more important. I want to go through, because I think, Megan, you touched on this here too. I think everyone's kind of seeing this drop off of leads here as we kind of go into the final quarter of the year, as we're already in the final quarter of the year. But we're kind of seeing that normally there's a drop off in this holiday season overall. And when it comes to leads and then set rates and then set that issued rate to demo rate, normally those numbers start to decline just because people they book an appointment and then their cancellation or their rescheduling or things like that here too. I know we had a question on that, is that even if you're getting a lot of leads and you're setting them, there's a set to demo rate that's decreasing. So Lester, I want to propose that to you first. So what are companies doing in a good way to be able to make sure that when the customer set an appointment, how do you build enough value so that in this time period around the holidays to keep them, to actually keep that appointment?
Yeah, it's really the touch points and having access to all your templates, because again, we're talking about an entire team of people having to really fall in line with what's going to really work, right? We get all this data throughout the year. Now we need to utilize how we can report out on it and use it to our advantages. So, I mean, it's really, utilizing more texting to make sure, just little small touches to people, to make sure, they still need you. They didn't go somewhere else. They're still interested in that appointment. We can still help them. You gotta use that texting functionality. You gotta use, to Ruben's point, just kind of not qualifying, but steps and forms and stuff like that to really just embed in their head that, okay, I really have a need. They really have a solution. They're really interested in me, and they're not just, I'm not just another number. So it's really it's that automated process. I keep going back to it, right? So once you have that appointment, there you have to have an automated process in place to assure that person is going to, still want to take your meeting.
Yep. I'll also add that more and more brands are standing up or have stood up, especially during COVID, inside sales team. So historically for home improvement, everybody was trying to get in the home and still trying to get in the home at the kitchen table. But more and more consumers are interested in doing something online or via Zoom, the way we've all been working. So brands who can give that option and, sell a deal over the phone and through Zoom are getting incremental sales as compared to the brands who are adamantly opposed to that, especially in home services.
Mm-hmm. And I want to add as well, I think that, there's a couple of different things we're talking about. Like you get your lead and you need to move it to getting that appointment set. That's where speed to lead and stuff comes in, where you've got to make sure that you are responding quickly. And then you've got your appointment set to actually getting in the home. I think what it really all comes down to, though, is reaching out and responding and interacting and having the whole process the way the customer wants. That we're adjusting our expectations. Maybe there's a way that we've always done it in the industry and we feel like, well, this is how we reach out. I saw a couple of people asking questions about, for instance, what do we do with text? Some people, are we using text to try to move them into a phone call, or what is the purpose? And I think the answer to that is, what do your customers want from that? Are they wanting? Some people want to go through the process with text message. I have to admit to being kind of one of those people personally. I'm just busy. I would rather just text, and I may never talk to them until they show up at my house. And I'm okay with that. But other people are not. And so you need to figure out what your customers like. And that goes back to that data and mindset and experimentation. But be willing to step away from what you're used to doing and maybe what you've always just historically done and try a few different things. I think it was Ruben earlier who said, maybe try out how about sending them pictures of before and after things that you've done, or being willing to continue to be on that Zoom call. I love meeting with my doctor on Zoom now, even though I'm perfectly fine going into the office. There's some things that are just a shift and we need to kind of adjust to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with a lot of those things that Lori just said as well. I can tell you firsthand, dealing with as many clients as I have and all the lead aggregators that I've used over the years, the reason that appointments stick is 100% based on one of two things. Number one is urgency on the project, and that does not just come from the customer. This is why I still am a fan of phone calls, okay? Because I can't create urgency through a text message like I can over the phone. Not that I won't accept an appointment over text messaging, not that I won't. If that's the only way the customer will discuss it with me, I'm happy to go through the whole process via text message. But my first goal is to get them on the phone because I create far more urgency when I'm talking to the customer. The other reason appointments don't stick is no value in the visit. There's two reasons. Number one is no urgency for the project. Number two is no value in the visit. No value in the visit means your appointment to them sounds like an arduous sales task that they don't want to endure in order to get a price. Okay. If the value of your visit is only you leaving a price, when something more fun than window dork comes along, guess what they do? They find a reason out of the appointment. People make time for that which is a priority. People make excuses for that which is not. Okay. So the other piece is if they don't feel the project is urgent enough, they're going to put you off till next year. And the next 2 months, we're going to hear this in our industry nonstop. Call me after the first, call me in the spring, call me after the first, call me in the spring. It's literally like it's already ringing in my ears right now of the thousands of customers I've talked to over the years that have said that somewhere between Halloween and Christmas. Right. And so it's our job to talk to them about that urgency, and how that sounds on the phone is, so what made you decide to check out your options in terms of windows online? And then we're going to find out what kind of need they have and what they currently have. Because I'll tell you what, if they don't internally feel like, oh my gosh, I need to get someone to look at this project right away, they don't act. And even if they set an appointment to pacify you on the phone, they don't go through all the way to the end of the demo. And that's the piece we're talking about here. They'll end up canceling because something better comes along. They'll end up canceling because someone else knocked on their door and got to it before you did. That happens too, where just randomly you will have a door knocker hit them and they were better than we were on that day. And so they ended up getting the lead when we didn't. So there's a lot of different scenarios of what can happen, but speed to lead is very key. I heard someone ask about that as well. We need to be getting the lead aggregator leads and any paid search leads under 60 seconds. Under 60 seconds, over a minute, and they're already on the phone with the next guy. Okay, so we have to get to them right away. If they don't answer, we have to call back a second time. If they don't answer after those 2 times from me, I'm texting and emailing, and I'm going after them in a systemized format to continue to try and contact them and get a hold of them, right? I may try calling first, but if that is not going to pan out for me in the first couple of calls, but I want to be able to talk about the urgency level of their project. I need the customer to feel the emotional pain of what's going on so that they will say, holy cow, I need to act. People do not act unless they're at 100% dissatisfaction with their current project and the state that it's in. People do not act until they're at that point. That's when they go online and fill out a web form. We have to then understand that they are in immediate gratification land. They were excited then. They were excited right then. And so if we let this lead age and say, I don't want to bother them, I don't want to call them right now, I don't want to blow their phone up, I don't want to send them all these texts. Okay, well, they're cooling down by the moment. And once we get them on the phone, then we only have 24 to 72 hours to get in front of them before they cool off again. So I hope that answers some questions there in terms of the urgency and the value of the visit are 2 really important pieces to getting that lead to stick from raw set to actually demoing the lead. So that's all I've
Yeah.
got.
And I'll add one thing that I have seen, and I know a lot of the big large brands do this, and not to promote other technologies that are not on this call, but there's a company called Hover, which has a design tool where when the lead comes in, a lot of brands are SMSing basically like a Hover link where the homeowner goes outside their home, and from 6 different angles, literally takes a photo on their iPhone from 6 different angles. And within 20 minutes, they're able to get a 3D model, essentially like a 3D appraisal of their home with all their measurements. I've seen the rise of that. We have an integration with them, and I think JobProgress does as well. More and more homeowners who feel engaged, right? To kind of Lori's point earlier of doing it the way the customer wants. That's been a huge piece, right? We're all on our phones, right? We're all stuck on our phones looking at it, and to be able to implement the homeowner to be kind of part of the design measurement process has been pretty game changing.
Angela Triplett had asked, how can you leave an estimate correctly on Zoom appointments, right? And I wanted to talk about that because when COVID hit, I was running a window siding and roofing company that was doing about $12 million a year in business. Okay. And we're one call close. I was the marketing and sales director. I've been on the sales end of the business too. So I immediately had to act. So the question was, do we retreat and stop running appointments and stop doing everything and just shut the doors and put everyone on unemployment? Or do we find a way to pitch people virtually, right? And so we ended up, I developed a system immediately. I created a survey, a needs assessment that we do in the house, and I would email it to customers, and I would force them to fill it out before we would do the Zoom call. So if you're not giving me all your needs and if I can't get an idea of what you're looking for, then there's no reason for us to jump on the call. And then with the Zoom call, what I would do is I would actually have the customer walking around the house, and they would actually be showing me the product. Like, it was Windows specifically. We spent a lot of time on Windows, and we would have them walking around the house, counting the windows. We had some of the customers taking measurements for us because it was the choice we had. But for siding, I did exactly what Ruben talked about, which was I started working with Hover. And so what I did actually is in my time off, which wasn't a lot then because I was trying to develop this virtual selling system, but I would drive around and take the Hover pictures because I found out customers won't do it. And they won't do it when I want them to do it. So I had to do it. So I would drive to their house. I would take pictures of each side of their house, all 6 of them. We would process it. And I would literally have that ready for the salesman before the Zoom call. So you have to do some more work. You have to put in the effort, right? But it can be done. With roofing and siding specifically, you can get measurements. There are also apps out there. I use one. I own a residential fence company here in West Michigan, and I use an app that actually will measure window opening satellite too. So, there's all kinds of different things that you can look into in terms of technology. Hover was a great one for us. Did we sell $1 million a month when we were in virtual? No, but we still were keeping the lights on, and we were selling 400 and 500 in virtual visits. So it's something. And a lot of our competitors didn't offer it at all, which meant we won by default that month. So keep that in mind.
Right. And just to piggyback a little bit off of that, virtual, it's going to seep in slowly, but it's going to be a must. Okay. Because these buyers today, they don't want to talk to a contract. Well, not buyers today, but buyers for the future. They don't want to talk to anyone, right? They don't want anyone coming in their house. They want it to come in a box and show up on their doorstep, and then they want to pay you, but they don't want to ever talk to you. So virtual is going to be a must. You have to start dabbling in it now because you will need it for that future buyer because they are coming pretty quickly.
Just to go back and reiterate a couple points that I heard there, it's just during this time between the holidays is you have to focus on urgency and of that value of the visit and build the value of every visit. Obviously, that's just necessary. But one thing I've heard across the board, being in sales and being in marketing, is go to the sales team, go determine how they build the value of the visit, go determine how they build the urgency when they're in the sales presentation. They go do a needs assessment, and that really moving your call center to doing your needs assessment is like that. Well, you could pull out their pain points and you remind them of their pain points of why they scheduled in the first place. That's what keeps appointments today. And what even in the holidays, all that kind of stuff, you have to be able to use that and leverage that. So to your point, Megan, I think phone calls, you can get those pieces out on a different level, But I think you can read people where they're at. You can do that over a text message. Why'd you reach out to us today? What caused you to, to reach out and fill out a form and get that information, and then go, wow, that sounds like a really big deal. I would want to get that taken care of if I were you as well.
Human beings make decisions based on emotion, not based on reason. And that's where we sometimes don't realize and we drop the ball, because homeowners are making decisions based on emotion. If I can get them into the point where they're feeling emotional pain about their project, they will act. If I am, however, not talking about that and I'm just talking about, hey, our stuff is great, let me tell you about all these features. Too much feature dumping happens on these phone calls. Like they don't know what argon versus krypton means. They don't know what a 20-year shingle versus like the homeowner. We forget that stuff sometimes, and we go way too deep into talking about us. It's very egocentric of most companies to tell you, right, oh, let me tell you how great my product is. You haven't even earned the right to tell them that. We need to talk about them and what they care about. What they care about is their project. What they care about is the drafts coming through the window that caused them to turn up their thermostat yesterday. What they care about is the leak coming into their attic that they don't realize has caused mold that they don't even know is there. And so if we're able to ask those questions, it gives us a much better reason to then get in the house, because the value of the visit must scratch the itch we created and need uncovering. The value of the visit has to be the prescription for the headache that you just created an urgency. Because if they then are looking at our appointment as the solution to their problem, they do it and they make time for it.
Tying into that, the pain as we're coming into this time of year, that their holiday party is coming up in a week.
Oh, yes.
That we're sensitive to that and being, there's a draft in here and I have a party and you're going to be there tomorrow. That you're taking into account during this difficult holiday time, the fact that it is an inconvenience to have you there, and that you're going to do everything you can to reduce any challenge that brings to them in their celebrations.
But I'd be curious for Sean, being a lead provider, what is the advice that you're giving to your buyers and your clients for those who are purchasing leads in December? Obviously, media dollars for media is much higher because we're competing with holiday season. So I'd like to hear kind of what you have to say, or what guidance Contractor Appointments is giving out during this time.
Well, I think at the end of the day, I mean, we can provide leads during the winter months. So lead volume does decrease overall. I mean, most of that ad spend goes to what presents you're going to buy your kids or all that kind of stuff. So the advertising is just more difficult. So lead volume just decreases because the lead cost skyrockets.
Yep.
But it makes it, at the end of the day, it's always about making the most out of every lead that's in your database, whether it's a past lead or a present lead. And the only way to get in the door with customers today is to make sure that you're meeting them where they're at. I think that this whole building the value of the visit, but really uncovering their need and trying to meet them where they're at and find out and uncover that need. What made them inquire 3 months ago, you just have to go make it relevant for them again. Make them feel that same pain why'd you filled out a form about 3 months ago? I'm just curious why.
Yeah.
And try to pull that out again, because if it was leaking then and they deprioritized it and no one touched it, then this is still like it. People will prioritize the things that are important with them, even in a busy season with the holidays here. So that again, trying to pull on that side of things is the best advice to be able to do it for companies to get net sales in this time.
On the active prospect side, we have obviously a lot of buyers out there. We do see a lot of buyers turning off, kind of like after the first week of December, not buying a lot of leads and basically turning to rehash and essentially taking all the leads that they've had for the year and just focusing on that. And then ultimately kind of minimizing their budget for December and just focusing on rehash. And then on the flip side, we see a lot of big brands go, nope, we're going to go to our lead providers and try to cut a deal and try to get the lowest cost CPL. And we know that if we call these leads and we buy them today, that come January 4th, first, second week of January, our sales are our appointments are going to skyrocket. And all those people that we bought in December will kind of come back around. So kind of two different strategies that we see from different buyers of different sizes.
It's fantastic to be able, your competition's down for leads when others aren't trying for them. But also one of the greatest things that I was just speaking with some, a Windows company the other day. And one of the things that they found is great during the holidays is going back to former happy customers. These people already feel like they know you a little bit, they trust you a little bit, and they're more likely to be like, okay, yeah, I know it's crazy, but I could get this deal. So looking at not just your rehash of leads that didn't convert, but going back to those that did convert, and setting up some campaigns where you're sending out some holiday deals to former customers only, and working that way, that can be good because you already have a little bit of a better relationship with them.
I was going to say that same thing. A lot of people are asking me this because right now I have a lot of clients, but also I'm getting emails from people that aren't even my clients that are going, what do we do now? It's November, December. Leads are slowing down because of retraction, but now they're slowing down because of holidays too. So now it's double whammy. What do I do? And so my first question is, what do you have in your database already? And they'll say, oh, well, I've got a bunch of old data, old leads. We've bought lead ag leads for years, or we have past customers, or we have rehash, or we have leads that have not panned out. And my question is, what are you doing there? And they say, well, nothing. And I said, well, you paid for all of those and they're already sitting there. So what would it hurt to call Hatch and say, hey, I'd like to send a text to everybody that says, did you know we install in the winter? Because I'll tell you what, because we're in the industry, we don't realize how stuff that we think is common sense is not common sense to consumers. Because we're in the industry, we don't remember that kind of thing. And so they don't even realize that we have a winter installation method for Windows. They don't even realize that I can install fence all year until the ground's completely frozen. Even then, I will get some roofing torches and pay my guys extra and they'll put them in then too. So it can be done, right? But a lot of customers don't realize it. To them, it's home improvement season's over till March right now. And so if we send out a text and maybe a photo or a picture to be able to speak to this, and we start to, say, hey, did you know? Hey, did you know ice damming is one of the most common roof issues this time of year? Did you know that can cause leaks in your roof? Sometimes you just send out tips. It may not even be, a right hook. If anybody follows Gary Vaynerchuk, he has a great book about social media marketing called Jab, 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 Right Hook. You don't need to right hook them every time. Sometimes you need a jab. But we can do that with the text messaging, with using things like Hatch. We can go into our old database and say, these leads aren't answering anyway. So what if they say, don't call me again after we text them? They're already not answering. Why not throw the Hail Mary in the fourth quarter in November and December? Why not, right?
It's another reason I really encourage customer newsletters as well. Send tons of good tips. Send DIY tips, send winterizing tips, send holiday tips, all of this that provides value. And then also, you may be having a special or something that you're running in there. But when they know that when they're getting communication from you, that it's valuable, then they are going to be excited to open it. They're going to be interested in reading about it. They're not going to do that, asking to be taken off your text list like we talked about earlier. And so providing value is just always key. And you guys are full of so many great tips that, like Megan said, like we think is common sense, and it just isn't to the average homeowner. So
yeah, absolutely. I want to get to some questions here as well. Everyone, there's a bunch of them have rolled in here, so I want to get into as many as we possibly can. And a couple of people have asked just about this text. Should we book appointments and setting appointments over text overall versus phone call? So Megan, I want to hear you had talked about, that's why you still want to get them on a phone call. But you also had mentioned that, like, if they don't want to book over a phone call or they don't want to get on a phone call, that it's still okay to text them and book an appointment that way. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that one.
Yeah. And Kayla had just asked, Kayla, for a fact that the demo rate's going to go down. You've been a student of mine for a lot of years. But nonetheless, yes. When it comes to demo rates, if you don't get the opportunity to create the urgency on the phone, is it going to stick as hard? No, it's not. That's the truth of the matter. But let me ask you a question. If you never get a hold of them ever, is the text message and setting the lead via text better than not setting them at all? It absolutely is. So you have to look at both sides, right? In my opinion, I would rather use texting to get a hold of people and then make a phone call. In every scenario, they're not going to respond to that. It's not going to work. In that case, I want to have a different process set up that, okay, this person is only going to be someone I can talk to through text messaging to email to set. And then I need to monitor those results separately so that I get a real idea of what my demo rate looks like so that I can understand marketing cost on those specifically. So I might have a process for if someone is only responding to text and will never answer our phone call, well, then I have a process for that. This is how I'm going to text them. This is what I'm going to do. The important part is to do it. Right. So, yeah, I think that's a great question. A lot of people are asking some questions about this. What's the opportunity there? Well, if they won't talk to us in any other way, we should be speaking to them in the way that they want to be spoken to. So,
and I think that as well, we still need to work to encourage that urgency by text message, by email, especially when they won't respond to a phone call. There are still ways we shouldn't, oh, well, it's only text, so I'll just send a basic text. We can still work to create that urgency, that personal touch, everything we do on the phone call. Try to do the best you can. It's not ever going to be as effective as speaking to someone just face to face, but a lot of times you'll get people who won't respond to you otherwise.
Yeah. I love the idea of you got to create processes for each type of the way that they book an appointment and that as well. So a couple of questions here came up with just like, what is the industry standard contact rate, set rate, demo rate? This is a question that comes up oftentimes in these webinars. And I'll give that open to anyone here, but I don't know if Ruben, if you want to speak into that a little bit.
So I'll speak from kind of past experience, supporting a call center for 5 years in the California, Arizona, Nevada market, buying 10, 15,000 leads a month. We would see a contract rate of anywhere from, 50% to 75%. Obviously, it varies depending on source. Consistently for solar, and this is just for solar, we would see a 13 to 15% set rate. So out of all the leads, 13 to 15% set rate. And then obviously your close rates indicative of your kind of sales team and leadership and all that. But curious what kind of Megan and Lori see, kind of from their clients.
I think that, and guess you kind of referred to this a little bit, Ruben, but it's going to be really very varied based on your specialty, exactly which industry are you doing solar, are you doing windows, or what the area that you're in, even the time of year. It's going to be varied, but that's why what my recommendation for you specifically would be to go back and look at the last year and calculate it. You have data, figure out what your base was, and then make some goals to increase that and set some experiments like we talked about. I'm going to change up the way I do my response, my rate. I'm going to make sure I'm getting those to within 60 seconds. Like Megan said, I'm going to be making sure that I'm in the door within 24 hours. How does that change, my close rate? So look at where you are at. That being said, I am in the middle of creating a kind of state of the industry report that we do at Hatch each year, where we kind of throw some data and try to get general. We were seeing some pretty high numbers, up to 59% close rates on which was pretty great. But again, we're kind of in that glorious season we've been in, and those numbers are going to shift a little bit. So keep an eye out though, and we'll get more of that data to you. I don't know, Lester, Megan, if you guys have heard other data info.
Well, that sounds about right. And it is so tough. It just depends on what area of the country you're in, what season it is, all that kind of stuff. So it's about right.
Conversion rates, to me, it depends on the lead source. If we're talking lead aggregators specifically, what I prepare my clients for is that if you're going with a lead aggregator, you need to expect that on the high end, you're going to convert 40% of those into appointments. And that's if you have all your ducks in a row. Okay. Because they're going to give you some that never answer. They're going to give you some that are not the scope of what you do. They're going to give you some that you just don't convert for whatever reason. But if you can build your process and your marketing spend on the fact that if all things firing on all cylinders, you can convert 40% of these lead aggregator leads into appointments. Then the other 60% are still in your database to nurture, number one. So those, you will get a certain percentage of those again over the next year when eventually they round the corner again and decide, oh, gotta look back into this darn siding again, right? So you'll see that. I always tell my clients that if we have your scripting in place, you're getting to it with speed to lead in under 60 seconds, you're following the cadences of this many calls, this many texts, this many emails in the first week, you should be able to convert 40%, again, if we're firing on all cylinders, into appointments. And if you're not, either your scripting is off, You're not getting to them quick enough. Or sometimes we deal with a lead aggregator that just doesn't care. Contractor Appointments actually cares about conversions. However, a lot of times these lead aggregators we deal with, they'll send us whatever garbage they have. Contractor Appointments is actually different. I always tell my clients that they actually care. That's why they put on these webinars, right? So, but there's a lot of them that don't care. And so you have to monitor, pay attention. And I would say you should count on 30%. You could even probably run a profitable, a program off of converting 30%. So contact rate is going to vary. It's just really, really hard to give a number on that. On old outbound leads in your database that are a year old, you'll see about a 5 to 7% contact rate. Normally, that's what all my clients are seeing. And we end up making that work in terms of, the payback, because the only thing we have in there in budget is payroll. Those were already paid for. So hope that helps somebody.
Can I throw out, I know we're like running so low on time, but one thing we haven't mentioned that I think is really important in the holiday season is also offering the option for financing. I know sometimes we hate that and don't want to touch it with like a 10-foot pole, but 75% of homeowners say that they want to finance some of their home improvement. So if you can offer an easy way to offer some financing with it, that is, I think I saw somebody asking a question about creating urgency for needs versus wants. That's another great one, is getting those wants in there before you're hosting people for the holidays by offering some financing or something that makes it a little less painful to their pocketbook right now.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Well, I want to be respectful of everybody's time here and our speakers here who have given us an hour of their time. I just want to say thank you to each and every one of you. We're going to send this recording off. We've had multiple people ask that question already here. This is amazing. I think as you go through this Q4, I think my hope for each one of you guys is that you're able to take one piece away from this. I think the building urgency, and whether you're selling a need or a want product, uncovering the why behind why they didn't acquire it in the first place. And you guys have amazing solutions to people's needs here, and it's just about getting it in front of them, right? So using technology like the Active Prospect to make sure your systems are dialed in, the consent is there, and you're making sure you're reaching out to the right people at the right time. And JobProgress, again, the automation, the systems, and being able to make sure your team's on the same page. And obviously just the consulting that Megan provides here too, just in all the scripting and being able to uncover the stuff and what you do. And Lori, obviously from the technology side of things, this text messaging isn't going away anytime soon. If you're not texting, you're missing out. Again, thank you all for jumping on here, and I hope everyone has a fantastic rest of the day.
Thanks, Sean. Thanks,
Bye,
everybody.
guys. Thanks, everybody.